I want to tell you about a 12-year-old boy. He lived in Jerusalem, and he was a kid that really didn't like being annoyed. One day he was walking through a forest just near his hometown, and as he was walking through, these Philistines came up to him. They were these people that had taken his country captive. They were taking people away, slaves, and they came up to him, and they were going to try to take him away as a slave. As they came to him, he looked around, he saw a couple of rocks, he picked some rocks up and he started throwing them at these guys. One hit him in the leg and he fell down. He rushed over to that guy and he picked up his sword and he started fighting them. But then 3 or 4 or 5 more Philistines came out, and he looked and he didn't know what he was going to do. He thought he was going to be taken as a slave. As he was worried, a strong man came up behind him, wearing a full suit of armor, sword drawn. And he just looked at the Philistines and he said, "Really? Did you really want to fight me?" These Philistines, they just ran for their life. The man went over to this boy whose name was Simon, and he put his hand down and he said, "Simon, can I help you up?" And he helped Simon up. He looked at Simon and he said, "Simon, I'm really impressed. You're only 12 and you were standing up against 5 Philistine soldiers. Hey, I've got a job offer for you. Simon, would you like to become my armor bearer?" You see, in those days, people who had armor, they weren't able to wear it all the time, and it was hard to get around, and so they would have someone who would carry it in case they needed to take it into battle. And this young man looked up and said, You're Prince Johnathan." Yes, he said, "Yes, I'd love to be your armor bearer. I'd love to be your armor bearer." And so from that day on, Simon became Jonathan's armor bearer. And they went to lots of different places together, but the Philistines, they started attacking more and more fearsome. They'd started stealing every single thing that the Jews had so that they couldn't even defend themselves. Got to a point where all the Jews were so scared, they were actually hiding in stinky toilets, yucky toilets. They were hiding in holes in the hills. And Johnathan, he was just getting so fed up with this. Everyone was hiding. His dad had an army, but they weren't able to go and fight. They were too scared because there was only Johnathan and there was only Saul who actually had a weapon. And Johnathan said to Simon, he said, "Hey Simon," they were in this rocky cliff. You can actually see it on the screen. And it's a pretty scary place. There was like 30 or 40 Philistine soldiers on one side, and he was on the other. And he said to Simon, "Simon, you know what? I'm fed up. Let's go over that other side and let's take these guys on if God is for us." So they walked down the hill and they started climbing up. And just before they started climbing, Johnathan said, "Okay, Simon, this is how we're going to know if God is for us. If God is for us, these guys will tell us to come up here and they'll teach us a lesson. If they say stay down there, then we'll know that God isn't for us and we just won't get involved." So they started walking through this cliffy area. And as they came to a place, the Philistine soldiers looked down and they started teasing them and calling them bad names. And Johnathan looked up. He was waiting to see if God was for them or God was against them. Were these people going to say, "Come up here and we'll teach you a lesson," or were they going to say, "You stay down there and we'll come to you"? He looked up, and this tough, strong Philistine soldier looked down and he said, "Hey, you Jewish worm, why don't you